Alec Pierce had an outstanding practice today for the Indianapolis Colts. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Colts, your daily Indianapolis Colts podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you all for tuning in and making us your first listen of the day. This is your daily podcast covering your Indianapolis Colts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am Zach Hicks, your boots on the ground here for Horseshoe Huddle. That's what I am this week here. That leaves, I don't know, what are you now, Jake? Horseshoe Huddle is what on the ground?
Butt on the ground? I'll just be the OG. It is butt on the ground a lot of the time, yeah.
Horseshoe Huddle's butt on the ground, Jake Arthur. We were both at training camp today, so again, we both can kind of give that analysis for you guys. But on today's show, we're going to do our typical training camp analysis, talk about the Colts offense, talk about the Colts defense, and then open the floor to some questions. But before we get into the offense, let's talk about some news and notes from today. Colts running back Jonathan Taylor is out of the area doing rehab on that ankle. That's all we're going to say about Jonathan Taylor for now, though, because I know you guys will make a whole episode about it if we keep going. But yeah, Jonathan Taylor was not at practice today. He wasn't on the sidelines and wasn't getting a bunch of crowd people yelling at him because he was not out there whatsoever. He was doing rehab. Some other news and notes: Rodney Thomas II and Deion Jackson both missed practice today. They were both out with an injury. Rodney Thomas has a toe. Deion Jackson was undisclosed. Yeah, I don't think Shane Steichen went into detail on Deion Jackson, right?
No, we didn't get to ask about Deion today. We just didn't get that far into it. But no, so far we don't know.
Okay.
He was out there though.
Yeah, I did see him out there. Tyquan Lewis was activated off the PUP list, which was great for the edge depth. And then Samson Ebukam was also back out there. So two edge rushers getting back out there at practice. Some other news and notes that just kind of dropped while we were getting ready for this podcast is veteran running back Kareem Hunt is coming in for a visit. And that's it. That's all I'm saying about Kareem Hunt. If you don't have anything nice to say, don't say it, right, Jake?
Perfect. Yeah. It's what Mama said.
Yeah. Nothing nice to say. So Kareem Hunt, veteran running back, who is looking for more than a minimum deal is what has been kind of put out there. So if the Colts do make this signing, it probably spells some really bad things for the Jonathan Taylor era when it comes to Indy, but we can do a whole podcast on that later if there actually is a signing there for Kareem Hunt. But let's talk about practice today, Jake. And before we get to the quarterbacks, again, I just want to single out this player, the player that I put in the title for a reason. I was so impressed with Alec Pierce today. Again, I'm biased. I love Alec Pierce in general. I think he's a phenomenal player, and I love his upside and what he can be in the NFL. But just studying him alone and just staring at everything he was doing, from his release package to stacking defensive backs down the field to getting open deep and coming away with a lot of catches, I thought he was doing just a phenomenal job out there. In 7-on-7s and 11-on-11s, I didn't have the charting. You might actually have more charting than me on that, Jake, but it felt like he came down with like 4 or 5 catches in those periods. And then when they were doing one-on-ones, I know one play in particular stood out to me where he was lined up against Darrell Baker Jr., really good young player who's having a great camp. And he burned Baker Jr. really bad off the line of scrimmage, stacked him on the post route, and then separated deep. Like it was like a good 4 or 5 yards of separation, but Sam Ehlinger kind of threw it out the back of the end zone, couldn't complete the pass. But everything I saw from Alec Pierce today was like, this is a young player who is ready for that next step. He looks just more conditioned, like more ready for this role. He looks faster. He looks quicker. He looks really crisp in his routes. Like I came away from practice being like, look, it was a sloppy practice, but the best overall player on the field today was Alec Pierce in almost every regard, because he was doing everything right when everyone else was being a little bit sloppy out there.
Yeah, I'd agree. I made a little comment. You and I weren't, around each other today, watching in different areas. But I had a same takeaway about Alec Pierce real early in practice after those one-on-ones you mentioned. I just turned to someone. I said, he looks really good as a route runner these days. Just really smooth. It doesn't look like there are some other guys in the receiver core where it looks like a lot of work to get in and out of their breaks and everything. He's getting a lot more smooth. And that play you talked about where Ellinger just overshot him out of the back of the end zone.
It was a gorgeous route.
It was close.
It was gorgeous.
We saw a perfect conversion of that by Michael Pittman, I think, in the very first rep of that. I think it was him versus Dallas Flowers. Kind of hit Flowers with that little hitch about midway down. Wound up getting it was like a 40-yard score, I think, in those one-on-ones. So Pierce did his part on that, just got way overthrown by Sam Ellinger, oddly enough. But no, he did have a few catches there in the 7s and 11s. Had a nice one from Gardner Minshew, I believe, along the left side. So really big day for him. It was a really meh day overall. So if you're kind of sifting for standouts, Pierce was definitely one of them.
Yeah, I really don't have many others. I mean, like Kylan Granson did his thing. Like he had a couple catches. Farrell Brown had a couple of nice catches. But outside of that, I really can't think of many other standouts. Like we'll talk about quarterbacks in here in a second, Jake. But like, did you have any other standouts on offense today?
I don't think so. I mean, there was one really good play, which I called the play of the day in my notes, was on 11 on 11s with the third team. Sam Ellinger found Cody Case.
Yes.
Case had a nice out and up against Michael Tootsie. And that gain, Sam put it perfectly. Case just cooked him. And, it was a beautiful gain. I'd said it was about 40 yards or so down the field. So that was probably the play of the day, at least for the offense.
Yeah. Now let's get to the quarterbacks here. Gardner Minshew did get pretty much all the reps in today's practice with the first team. Anthony Richardson was with the 2s. And, there was a lot of things going around that Richardson had like an off day or an inconsistent day. I get it. Like the interception, we can talk about that here in a second. But like, I didn't really see it as like a bad day whatsoever. Like there was just a couple misses here and there, but for the most part, like he made some things happen. They did 11 on 11s early in the day, and it was a 3rd and 1 situation. He had an RPO roll out to the left, and he was about to keep it, and he would have been stopped a yard short, and he pulled back at the last second and threw it out to the flat for like a good 6 or 7 yard gain. It was a really, really nice athletic play. I think he did some other really good things out there too. So yes, it might not have been at the standard that he set the last 2 days, but I didn't see anything today that would have told me like, oh, this was a bad day for Anthony Richardson.
No, I don't think it was discouraging or a bad day or anything. I do think he probably came back down to level a little bit after like going really high the last couple of days. I had him at 4 of 5 passing in 11 on 11s. The only incompletion being the interception. Yeah. But in 7 on 7s, I thought he was kind of scattered a little bit. The timing wasn't necessarily there, which is something we had seen earlier, rewind about a week and a half, and we were seeing that. Yeah. But again, he corrects things throughout practice. He gets better. One kind of veteran thing that he did when 11 on 11s opened up, they were backed up like deep into their own territory. They pretty much had their butts on the goal line, and he drew the defense off sides and got the Colts about 5 more yards of cushion there to operate. So that was a nice little savvy move that he was able to do. So it wasn't all bad. It wasn't all great. It was more of an average day than the really awesome days we'd been seeing from him, but not bad by any means.
Yeah, I will say for penalties today, oh my gosh, there were so many penalties on both sides today. Like a ton. We'll get into some of the defensive ones later, but offense had a lot of false starts as well. But I did want to go into the interception a little bit because I think there's a little bit of a misconception with that interception. They heard pick down the sideline. It was definitely underthrown, thrown a little too low on the back shoulder to Mike Strawn, but it kind of goes into some of our concerns with a Mike Strawn player. Whereas when the ball is up there and he's able to go up and get it, he's going to go up and get it. But if he has to play through a defender whatsoever or be physical, he's just not going to compete for the ball. And I think that play was a perfect example where it was a 3-by-1 set. It was a 3rd and 1. And I told the person I was sitting next to, I was like, oh, they're going to throw a jump ball to Strawn here. Like it was very, very like everyone.
Are you the guy? You the guy breaking down the game to complete strangers?
well, I was like, look, it's coming because that's what it's a 3-by-1. It's press coverage on the backside, and it's Mike Strawn. So Strawn gets vertically. He doesn't really stack his defender really well. So Richardson tries to throw the back shoulder, and Strawn gets his head around late. Doesn't really compete for it whatsoever, and it's like a really, really easy interception. Yeah. I'm not saying that
it was right into Tolliver's breadbasket for sure.
Right. So I'm not saying it was like Richardson's like absolved from blame on this, but like that is where playing with the twos gets you compared to playing with the ones. When you're
Mhm.
playing with a Mike Strawn rather than Alec Pierce or Michael Pittman Jr., those guys are going to compete for that ball. They might even come down with that or knock it away. Strawn is not going to stack the defender super well. He's not going to play through contact. He's not going to break it up. And we can talk when we talk like bigger picture shows. We can talk about what we see with the wide receiver room. But I do think a lot of that play was also on Strawn than just on Richardson.
Yeah, it was a shared effort. I thought the ball probably needed to be a little more outside toward the boundary, but again, just like you said with Strawn, there are some really brilliant plays you see, but there's also some things you see where it's like, maybe that's why it's not clicking. He doesn't.
Yeah,
his awareness isn't always great. He isn't always ready for the ball when it's there. And then for as big as he is, he's not really a killer with the ball in the air. He doesn't really have the Alec Pierce mentality. Like Pierce and Pittman want the ball every time it's in the air. Like they're going to fight for it. And he just doesn't quite have that at all times.
Right. Now, coming up, guys, we're going to talk about the Colts defense and what we saw from that side of the ball coming up in just a second. Our partners at eBay Motors have teamed up with Locked On Fantasy Football host Vinny Iyer to bring you some of the best fantasy picks each week all season long. Whether you're prepping for the draft or scouting the waiver wire every week, we're going to provide you with players that are guaranteed to fit on your roster. So with draft prep underway for the upcoming season, let's see who Vinny has picked out for us on this week's eBay's Guaranteed Fit fantasy picks of the week. And this is one of my favorite ones that Vinny has picked because this player helped me win a fantasy championship last year. If you're looking for a second-year fantasy football wide receiver who can drive your team to big points while he catches on with a new starting quarterback, then expect a smooth ride when investing in Saints' Chris Olave. Olave was as dangerous as a number one could be in every single capacity as a rookie, and there's no reason to pump the brakes on him now that he has Derek Carr throwing to him. Vinny Iyer from Locked On Fantasy Football is going to help you win your fantasy championship, and eBay Motors knows a championship team is about each player being a perfect fit. The same with your vehicle. With eBay Guaranteed Fit and over 122 million parts and accessories for your vehicle right at your fingertips, you can make sure your ride is always running smoothly. Air filters, brakes, batteries, taillights, alternators, shocks, struts, you name it, eBay Motors has it. And they'll make sure that it's the right fit for your car because eBay Guaranteed Fit helps you understand exactly what part you need for your vehicle the first time. So go forth, switch gears, crank the AC, and say goodbye to sweating if your ride needs a little fixing up. Because now you'll always get set up for success from the get-go with eBay Guaranteed Fit. Everything your vehicle is calling for you is just a click away. For the parts and accessories that fit your vehicle, look for the green check. Get the right parts, the right fit, and the right prices at ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. All right, and every day we're going to be off from the podcast tomorrow because there is no practice. It's a really chill day for us. We get to finally relax for a day here. But we'll be back at it on Thursday, back at it on Friday as well. I'll do at least a little pregame for you. And then also we have the game coming up on Saturday against the Buffalo Bills. So we'll be doing a post game for you guys on that as well. So make sure you are subscribed to the Locked On Colts YouTube channel or wherever you listen to your podcast. All right, Jake. So getting to the defense again, this was a very sloppy day for everybody. It was so sloppy. And I think the player who I don't want to say he was super sloppy because he's still a young guy learning a new press technique. It's only slightly different from what he was doing in college, but he's still trying to learn the intricacies of it, and he's just getting back from injury. But second round pick Juju Brents had two pretty obvious penalties today. They were really, really clear holds. They were both on times where he pinched a guy going inside on him on press, and then that receiver tried to work back outside, and he just tackled him. It was kind of ugly on both of them. I think there was a third one later in practice too, where it could have been a penalty as well. So Juju Brent's going through some of the lumps and bumps that we kind of expected from a young cornerback group. But I guess if you want to say like a loser on the day, him getting those penalties was, a little rough for him.
Yeah, at least you're trying to get that ironed out now. I'd rather all that like come in bunches now than it does before the season actually gets here, because we've seen a young promising cornerback get that overflow of penalties before. But no, I thought he actually did a couple nice things on the day as well. I thought he was aggressive and tried to fight for the ball a couple times. There was one, even through the play and after the penalty, he was trying to punch the ball out of, I think, probably Ashton Doolin's hands. But he's out there trying. I mean, he's those bigger guys, especially with the longer arms, they're going to get those penalties. They just are.
Yeah.
You hope you can tone it down a little bit. But he's also playing a massive amount of catch up. He missed the first week and a half of practice. I think that was like the first 6 practices. So yeah, he's got some catching up to do, but overall, like, I thought the rookies did some nice things today. Darius Rush had a nice pass breakup in one-on-ones, as did Jalen Jones. Brent's even had one as well. I think it was a good one during 7-on-7s, maybe one he didn't get flagged for. But yeah, it was a nice learning day for the defense, those young guys, because Rush, I think, was also the one that got mossed by Mike Strawn during one-on-ones.
Okay, yeah, I didn't see that. I was watching more of the offensive line stuff.
It was on the opposite field from where you were.
Okay. Yeah. The one-on-ones, I was trying to catch a little bit of wide receiver and DB one-on-ones, but I figured you'd be watching that, so I wanted to watch the O-line and D-line, which I will say, just a quick note, the defensive line was abusing the offensive line in one-on-ones. Now, that's what happens in one-on-ones with O-line and D-line, because defensive linemen are getting way more freedom than they get in an actual game setting, and offensive line has way less help than they get in a game setting.
It's literally one-on-one. Yeah,
which is not real. So you got to take it with a grain of salt. You just got to look for little positive things like, are they getting to their outside shoulder and stuff like that. So it really wasn't a big issue there, but I did want to make a note of it there. I put another note down for the substitutions that were going in at Mike linebacker. We talked about this yesterday because that's what Gus Bradley mentioned, is they're trying to find a backup Mike. And Zaire Franklin was the Mike with the starters. And then when Franklin would come out, it wasn't Shaquille Leonard doing any Mike work at all. It was Segun Alubi, JoJo Doman, and Grant Stewart. And it was today it was mostly Doman and Alubi. Stewart was doing some other things.
That's what I noticed. Whenever I was paying attention to that, it was usually Doman calling the defense.
Yeah. So, I want to see which one of those guys can really pull away, because I think all 3 of them are in the same kind of tier. Like, I think Stewart is pretty safe at being on the roster with his special teams ability. Doman's another player where he could be safe with his special teams ability, but does Alubi kind of make it so the Colts keep 6 because of his ability to play Mike, or do one of these other 2 guys take it from him? I think it's going to be really interesting to watch that there. But I did want to go back to corner for a second and talk about this group kind of, overall, like in a macro level. It's really interesting to see the way these guys play every day, because I had someone mention like, oh, did Alec Pierce only look good because the corners aren't very good? I'm like, they're competing, man. Like, they're getting out there and they're making it difficult for these wide receivers. Like, they're not perfect. They're really young guys, but I will say this with the cornerback group. I do think there's going to be some struggles this year for sure, but I don't think I've seen anything to where I've been like, this is going to be worse than like 2017 or 2018's cornerback groups, or 2011's cornerback group. Like, I think this will be below average, but I think these young guys are going to get better every single day and start improving throughout the year.
Yeah, like, there's going to be times where they probably get killed. Like, they're going to have some tough matchups this year. Like, they have DeAndre Hopkins twice. Just for example, Devontae Adams again. So there's going to be some rough times. But I'm not noticing anyone who's like getting killed every day.
Yeah.
Like, we've seen that before. Like, there's been summers where 1 or 2 guys in particular are just constantly on the business end of a whooping with the receivers. And there hasn't been that one guy this year. Honestly, 2 guys who I've seen probably on the losing end of a lot of reps are guys who have really had great off seasons. Darius Rush and Darrell Baker Jr. are guys who have given up some big plays, but their entire body of work has been really good.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's just like with offensive linemen, like, they can give up a sack in a day, but if they shut the guy out the rest of the game, it really was a good day. So
yeah.
Cornerbacks are just kind of the same thing. Like, they can give up one big play and suddenly the sky is falling.
Yeah.
But their body of work overall has been pretty good.
Darrell Baker Jr. has been pretty much matched up with Alec Pierce for most of camp, or at least from what I've seen. And I think that is such a tough matchup in this kind of setting, because you have a guy who's good at press and good at stacking and good at contorting his body to come away with deep catches. So you could be doing everything right, but you have a 6'4" guy who's like 210 pounds that is just quick and stacking you with ease. Like, Baker Jr., I think the only reps where I've been like, oh, shoot, he got burned there, it's only been Alec Pierce. Like, Pierce is just, he's a tough matchup. But I've been really impressed with Daryl Baker Jr. I know we mentioned it a lot, but the last 2 days, like, really focusing in on him, like, of the two starters, I'm not as sold on Dallas Flowers, but watching Baker Jr., I'm like, okay, like, this guy, he's like a coaching clinic for this scheme. It's just making sure it's always consistent. So really, really impressed with some of these young corners and hope they can continue to grow throughout the year. But coming up, we're going to talk about some of your questions that you have for camp and really dive into some of these extra topics that you guys want us to talk about. All right, guys. So kicking off this segment, I know what most of these questions are going to be because I just haven't.
The glances have been common.
So we're going to lump them all together. Kareem Hunt signing impact the Colts. We had some other Kareem Hunt ones in here as well. There was a bunch of other Kareem Hunt ones in here. I'm going to throw. Yeah. Apparently the Colts have offered Hunt more money to come work out than what the Saints were offering or something. Like, I don't want to say anything about Kareem Hunt. Jake, do you have anything you want to add to this?
Well, I was going to say one thing my dominating thought on this all really is that if they sign Kareem Hunt, which I don't know because they clearly don't want to invest too much money in the position, but if they do, it probably would require a decent amount of money. That's probably not a good sign for Taylor's availability this year, whether it's willingness or injury, whatever. I'm going to think if they sign Hunt, it's a bad sign for Taylor.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing we can really take away from this because, I don't like, I just wish it were anybody else.
Yeah.
Like, I just wish it were anybody else. And I think you guys know, look, if you guys are wondering why I feel this way, just look up, I think it's November 30th, 2018 with Kareem Hunt, and you'll understand why I feel a certain way about him. But if he gets signed, obviously it's a player who's been productive. And on the field, he can do some things out there. So we'll have to see. We'll talk about it if the signing happens. We'll do like little news and notes and really talk about it and all that stuff right there. And we'll talk about what it means for Jonathan Taylor if that signing comes in. But for right now, I think we're just going to mostly avoid that topic. So I do appreciate you guys dropping a lot of comments and questions about it, but I just don't want to talk Kareem Hunt right now. We have a couple questions about Mike Strawn here. Can Mike Strawn be a number 4 wide receiver? He's bringing the heat asking this question here, but
he already left for coffee with his wife, so he'll have to come back and see the answer.
Yeah, so I don't know, Jake. Are you and I on the same thing here where it's like, I'm not giving up on the Mike Strawn experiment, but I don't think I've seen enough really to be like, yeah, I'd have him at wide receiver 4 or 5 or 6. Like I'm not completely giving up, but I'm close to giving up.
Well, he won't be 4 because, you've got McKenzie, Downs, and Doolin after the top 2. So he won't be 4. If anything, he'd be, 6 if they want to keep that many. I understand why the team maybe, hasn't been super, super sold on him and given him a big role these last couple years. With that said, there's immense talent. Like, he obviously dominates training camp every single year. But I don't know. I don't think he is super safe right now. Like, there's other guys who have done well. Brashad Perriman still makes a compelling case. They may want to keep an extra tight end instead of an extra receiver.
Yep.
Strawn probably has the inside track to be that last receiver just because he's been there a couple years. He has the size, the athleticism, the talent, and he's doing well in camp overall. But I don't know. I'm not going to be surprised if he doesn't make it.
Yeah. No, I agree. We got 2 just kind of throwaway quick ones here. We got our boy Philippe saying hi and asking if I'm still in Indy. Yes, I'm in Jake's office right now, aka my bedroom.
I hear my dog walking around.
Yeah, there you go. And then Gary Thompson, we did meet him over at breakfast the other day. He came up and said hi and said that he appreciates the show. So Gary, what is up, man? Glad you were tuning in and leaving a comment for us. We had a couple other questions here. And we got Lloyd Tunsil, who has played better so far, Saguna Luby or Grant Stewart? I think that's an interesting one because
it is.
From my watching the last 2 days, Stewart is the guy on special teams. Like, he's the guy on special teams. But on defense, man, Alubi flies around. He had a really nice would-be tackle on Xavier Scott on like a 3rd and 2 or something, where there was a sweet play to Scott, and everybody was watching Richardson because Richardson was the one handing it off.
Yeah.
And Alubi outraced Scott to the corner and tackled him for what would have been a would-be. I think he actually lit him up too, like he always does. But Alubi's a fun player to watch. I'm really excited to see him in the preseason.
Yeah, they're performing differently, so it's hard to compare at the moment. Like I think Stewart is better in a phone booth. Like if you contain him in the box, I think he's probably more reliable, and he's there against the run. He's in the right spots a lot of times. But Alubi is that sideline to sideline, like heat-seeking missile. Now that's going to result in some misses. Like he's not always going to be in the right spot, but your chances of a bigger play or, cutting the ball carrier down before they do much damage, Alubi's probably your guy. So it's hard to say because they're just two different styles.
Yeah. Yeah. We got Christopher asking here, who's the biggest sleeper on the team at the moment? Now, obviously, I think we both say Darrell Baker Jr., but like before,
it feels like he's not a sleeper anymore.
Because maybe it's because we keep yelling about him all the time. But oh man, biggest sleeper. I mean, I think Pharaoh Brown's had a couple really good days this week.
Yeah,
and I could see him pushing for like tight end 4. I don't think it's going to be anything crazy, but like being that blocking tight end. I mean, Saguna Alubi, we've been pushing so much. I don't know. Do you have anybody else there?
Yeah, I could see Pharaoh Brown just because, the other tight end's been hurt and he's got reps with the first team these last couple days. But even if he makes the roster, he's not going to be like a pass catcher. So he's not going to stand out as like a dark horse to people. Someone who might actually catch eyes, I would maybe say Trevor Denbo would be one.
Yeah.
Because like we just know there's been so many injuries in the safety group that he could get out there and actually play. Denbo's a good one. Receiver's pretty wide open too. Like I could see any of like Rashad Perriman, Vincent Smith, or like I'll say it again, Cody Case come out and do something, whether that's make noise in the preseason or even sneak into the last roster spot. Case obviously probably has the harder road there, but he's a return specialist as well. But those are guys who aren't really being talked about right now that might actually do something.
Yeah, I had another good one that I saw from Rico Suave in here, which is cool. But it wasn't a question, but it was enough of Richardson on the second team. And this touches on what I wanted to say while I was at practice today, because I don't see the point anymore. I don't know if it's just me and I came in here expecting more out of Gardner Minshew, but like I'm tired of the checkdowns to Evan Hull. I'm so tired of that. I was telling the guy next to maybe I was just talking to too many strangers today. But I told the guy next to me, I'm like, how many passes are going to go to Holt in this session when it was Minshew out there? And then the first one, he short-armed it to Holt and hit the ground. I was like, it's just, I don't know. It's just.
I had the same conversation today because at this point, what are you getting out of that? Yeah. Because regardless, the only thing that's inevitable with this quarterback situation is that Anthony will be the starter at some point. So, and I really had this revelation when I was doing my notes over for Horseshoe Huddle today, and I was like, here's the guy he had completions to. And I was like, when he is playing in the NFL, these are not the guys he's going to be having completions to. Like, get him out there with Pittman and Pierce. So, like, if you want him to build a stronger chemistry with these guys, get him out there more often. Yeah. I understand what they're doing. They want to keep things rotating. They don't want to throw too much at him. But I think we're at the point where a lot of us have seen enough from Richardson to where we don't think it'll be a disaster.
No.
Like it may be pretty bumpy at times. It's not going to be it might be pretty ugly at times in the passing game. But I think I've seen enough where I think it's time to make that investment. Like, just go ahead and give him those snaps.
Yeah, as someone who was the highest of pretty much anyone you would ask on Anthony Richardson, he's further along than I thought he'd be at this point. Like, he actually looks much better than I expected the first camp to be a little rough. But honestly, from what I've seen the days I've been out here, it's like, this is an NFL quarterback. This is a starting NFL quarterback. This is what he looks like. You know, I'm not saying he's been superb or anything like that, but when you see him next to Gardner Minshew, it's like, oh, okay, that's a backup NFL quarterback in Gardner Minshew. And that's a starting NFL quarterback in Anthony Richardson. Like, that's pretty much my takeaway every single day. Even the days where, like today, where Richardson wasn't amazing and wasn't just ripping it the whole day. It's like there was just little things he was doing where it's like, yeah, that's a starting NFL quarterback, you know?
Yeah,
Like,
I think if we're going to see any, I don't know if they'll make a move at some point during camp, but if we see the tide start to change, it might be after the first preseason game.
yeah.
That seems like a good checkpoint for them to be like, okay, let's start leaning more into Anthony with the first team.
Yep. Well, every day is, again, we're going to be back, not tomorrow, but we'll be back on Thursday, Friday, and on Saturday right after the game. So you guys can make sure you're tuning in to wherever you listen to your podcast, especially on YouTube. We are getting those subscribers up and getting a lot of you guys in here for these comment sections. And if we missed your comment today, don't worry. Next time we go live, we will try to answer more and more questions. And I think one of these days we'll do just a live stream that's not like a show format, just to answer a bunch of questions and talk with you guys. So be on the lookout for when we announce something like that. We'll do something like fun that way for you guys. But if you don't already, follow at Locked On Colts, at Jake Arthur NFL, and at Zach Hicks 2 on Twitter. Also subscribe to Locked On Colts podcast on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. We'd love your guys' ratings and reviews, and we'll see you guys back here on Thursday.